A new report suggests that the pilot of this month's Ethiopian Airlines crash did not receive a next round of simulated training on the Boeing 737 MAX 8. That's according to the New York Times. Boeing has often boasted 737 pilots needed little training to fly the MAX 8, an assertion that's now coming under scrutiny.
The pilot had over 8,000 hours of flying experience, and investigators are now looking into whether a malfunction caused the deadly crash.
So joining us now is aviation safety analyst Todd Curtis. Thanks so much for joining us, Todd. Let's start with these simulations, right? The pilot was supposed to receive a next round of simulator training. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to because of the crash. Would it have helped at all to undergo that sort of training? Because we had heard reports earlier that there was sort of a refresher training, an hour on an iPad, but not necessarily simulation.
It depends on what would have been in the syllabus for that simulation training. It's unclear at this time if the training the co-pilot would have gone through, had there not been a crash in Ethiopia, would have included a scenario that included the MCAS system, the automated system that controls the pitch of the aircraft, that included the MCAS system failing. So the investigation's ongoing, and it will be some time before that part of the training is more clear to the public.
So, Todd, you've investigated Boeing crashes before. As you know, the Justice Department is now looking into the company. What kind of evidence might they be looking for about the company's practices?
Although the Justice Department is neither confirming or denying the status of an investigation, it seems as though there is something ongoing even before the Ethiopian crash. And it looks like they're looking at the certification process that happened with the 737 MAX, because there were some questions, even after the Lion Air crash in October, as to what was the sequence of events that led to the system being certified by the FAA.
So listen, now we've heard that the Canadian and European equivalents of the FAA, they want to do their own investigation into Boeing's 737 aircraft. What does that tell you about the reputation of Boeing and the plane around the world? And actually, also, what does that tell you about the FAA's reputation? Because the FAA was the standard.
It's unclear whether or not the actions of the Canadian and British authorities really represent a lack of faith in the FAA system, or if this is just a kind of conservative prudence that typically is the hallmark of organizations like the Civil Aviation Authority of Britain and Transport Canada. Both of these countries have very sophisticated aviation industries, and they have the expertise to come to their own independent conclusions about any certification decisions by the FAA. So on the surface, I don't think it says much about the reputation, but I'll wait to see what those authorities say is their full reason for doing the additional testing.
And finally, Todd, Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan is being questioned for promoting Boeing while serving at the Pentagon. Does this in any way impact the investigation in your mind?
From what I understand of the concerns with Secretary Shanahan, I don't believe so. The issue has to do with whether or not there was either a conflict of interest or even an appearance of a conflict of interest based on statements he said primarily about Boeing defense programs, not necessarily about the 737 MAX in particular. But again, that's something that's being looked into, and I'm sure the facts will be a bit more complete as the months wear on.
All right, Todd Curtis, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.